to another show. Again, we're going to do debuts. Debut films by directors. So I'm going to do another two debut films by directors who want to do some good stuff. And one of them is a director who I've just started watching this film, so I don't know where his career's going beyond. It was very well respected, but I'm going through his films at the moment, or just starting with his films. So it's Hsien. I'm probably absolutely butchered his name there, and I'll probably continue to butcher it. And then we go on to Abel Ferrera, Diller Killer. So the Hsien film we cover is Cute Girl, which starred Kenny B, who was the star of a few of his early films, and Fong Fei, who's another was another musician. So these were both music stars. And you can tell in the film because there's lots and lots of musical score and lots of songs throughout it. And this is pretty much a very traditional film. This is a film in the romantic comedy feel. It's a very traditional romantic comedy. But it's very likeable. Here's the thing it's like, I'm not a big fan of these kind of films. These kind of films bore me usually. But this one was pretty charming, despite the fact that there's way too much incidental music and background music telling you what they're feeling. There's way too much of that. That actually goes way over the top, and it's like, will you please stop at a certain point? It's annoying. It's not as annoying as some of the stuff you get in some of the Pretty Women who have all the like old pop songs always playing, but it's still got that kind of feel of, do you really need to tell me this? Do you really need to show this? But the film itself is actually quite enjoyable. I mean, the director said his third film, which was The Boys from Fungi, was basically his proper debut. The first few films were just like learning the job, basically. And you can sense he isn't fully engaged yet. He hasn't quite worked himself out yet. He's still doing stuff, and in romantic comedy genre, which was where he was trained with other directors as an assistant thing, so he's still finding his feet, and this is a commercial film, obviously getting made in Taiwan, in his industry. It was easy to fund because pop stars playing the leads. It was just one of those things. He could show off, I can make a film, because he'd been an assistant, he'd been a scripter, so he knew what he was doing. The funny thing is, as soon as he became a director of note, pretty much the first thing he did was ditch himself as a writer. So obviously he didn't really rate his own writing ability that much. Like, he hired other writers to do stuff. I think he probably could get more from that. The thing about this film, though, is it's really well put together for this kind of movie. I mean, it's a very traditional thing. Is this girl, the cute girl of the title, she's a heiress to this firm that's making these industrial songs in Taiwan that are very successful, and they want to marry into another family of people who are, well off, so they can combine their industry, really. So she's not really getting a chance to marry someone she wants to marry. She didn't ask to marry someone just for the sake of the family expectations. So she's really rebelling against that, but she didn't know how because she was a good girl of the title, but she's very frustrated. She goes to see her aunt, which is her escape, to go to the countryside and see people who have less focus on money and expectations of money. That's when she runs into the Kenny B character, who's a surveyor, and he's helping them survey for this new road going through the countryside. And they run into each other, like into escapades. She teases him a lot, and they start to connect, really. But of course, eventually she's called back to the city, and she has to go and be a good girl and hook up with an expected marriage candidate who's a guy from another big family. That's the general story. And of course, the Kenny B character is going to fight for her and cause havoc in her relationship to try and win her heart, really, and try and win over her family and all the rest of it. So, it's a very basic story. I've seen it a million times in so many TV shows and so many films, and it's like, a variation, just a very obvious idea, and very obvious emotions, and there's nothing at all unique about the setup of the story. But what's good about the film is the direction. That's what really makes it, because even though wasn't a film that the director really looks back on that fond, I don't think, it's still really well directed, and the writing always finds weird kinks to keep it interesting throughout. Like, it's already obvious the director's less interested in the central romance than what he can do outside that romance and what he can do with the weird characterizations. Like, the Kenny B character is a bit eccentric and weird. He's kind of like foster caring this kid from an orphanage, and he's been over to his house a lot, and they're hanging out, and he's taking them to different places. The girl was she's very independent, very kind of spunky, and just doesn't really fit into the expectations, even though she wants to be a good girl to her family. But she does have a kind of wicked side that you see a lot in the countryside, that it wouldn't be appropriate for the civilization version. So she's getting compressed into this sort of facade, really. But you see much more of her actual character in the countryside. She can be more herself. And she can interact with the working class people, and she's on a lot better with them. She's just much more of a kind of earthy person. She can be fun with them, and they can be fun with her, and she deals with the local kids, and they have muck fights and stuff. And it's just like a sense of these characters, who they actually are. And anytime you get that, the film really works. Anytime you're dealing with the characters dealing with kids, the characters dealing with other locals who are a bit stubborn at times. There's a joke where they trick the Kenny B character, thinks he's been bitten by a snake. Turns out he wasn't. He was just scratched. But they make him through hell just because he's annoyed them. And there's stuff like that really work, even though, I mean, it's pretty lowbrow. It does work because of how the way it's played. There's a lot of stuff where when he goes to break up the romance in the city, him and the intended beau get on really well and they become pals. And that just annoys the hell out of her. It's like, you're here to break this up and you become pals with the person you're trying to annoy. What the hell are you doing? There's stuff like that really works. There's lots of charming things, like he goes in and crashes this party where she's getting her engagement announced, and it's just really awkward and silly, and just like, it's not the big melodramatic thing, it's just much more like, oh god, what are you doing? And just, everything just very awkward. There's lots of things like that where it's always directed going in a different direction from the genre. And that's probably why they slapped in all those songs to try and put it back on track, because it's like, the best stuff in the film has nothing to do with the romance. Now, the romantic leads are fine. They're very charming. They do what they're needed for the film. And they're very likeable. You do like them. But it's almost like they're more interested in the plot they're in. It's like you wish they had a better plot to go along with the characters. Because whenever the director has things for me to do outside of romance, or outside of the convention of the genre, it's more interesting than any of the genre tropes, really. And you feel he's getting a bit frustrated by what film he has to make. So there is that in the film, a suggestion of it's a director forming and just finding what he likes and what he doesn't like. And you're seeing bits of both in this film. You're seeing a film that's kind of half directors and half not, because he has to follow conventions. But it is quite interesting to look at a film like this made by a director who's going to do better stuff, but he's kind of trapped within a system that wants something more easy to swallow for the mass audience. And you can see where the tension is. So it's not an entirely satisfying film because it's going two different directions always. But it's a very enjoyable film because it's well directed, the acting's good, you like all the characters, they've all got weird funny quirks, and they've all got lives outside of what you'd expect. Like the guy they're trying to set her up with turns out to have a girlfriend elsewhere, and he's just going along with this as well, with no intention of actually going through with it because of his family. And there's lots of weird things like that actually work a lot better than the conventional stuff. So Cook Girl is worth seeing, but it's in a collection of the director's other films, and it's like you have to go into it with expectations of what it is rather than this is an opening film by a master. It's not. This is a first film by a person who's still trying to find themselves. So you have to go with that expectation. But it is a very enjoyable film. So, it's definitely worth seeing. Now in debuts we go to Abel Ferrera's Diller Killer, which is completely different in a sense that it is a director who knows what he wants. But like Cute Girl, he's not quite there yet. I mean, one of the big things I think both of these films actually have in common, wrong direction, is they're too long. They're too long for what they've got. They're both basically short story ideas. And they both feel like they're 10 minutes too long. And it's... So you get some drag once in a while in the films. It's like that an experienced director would feel and just say, we need to kind of trim this. Here, both of them have that sense of we have to get a certain length. I mean, Diller Killer is a shorter film, but it feels like it still needs to lose 10 minutes. It feels like it drags in certain areas. And because it's made its point, it's still making the point. So it's that thing it's got. It is a kind of very simple story. Ultimately, it's about this guy who's an artist. And he's a successful artist, but not mega successful. He's done some stuff people like, but he's very frustrated. He's basically living the breadline a lot of the time. He's relying on his girlfriend. He had 2 girlfriends. Both of them live with him. But it's not like an idealised situation. One of them's a bit brain dead. And obviously they use her for sex, basically. It's a menage a trois. And she's always been used a lot, and no one really respects her. And she just hangs out, and she floats to powerful people. The other one's this woman who is who's more educated, and she's obviously slumming with the artist just now, and escape from the bourgeois life, but she's going to go back to the other life eventually. So, and she's not as smart as she thinks about it, it's about the world she's in. But you've also Abel Ferrera playing the artist, who's maybe not as good as he thinks he is, and maybe, I think a lot of the time he knows it, and he's very frustrated. He's living in a building where his neighbours are a rock band, and they're always playing music. He's got a deadline to finish this painting off, because he needs to pay money from the painting to actually to pay his rent, so he's not homeless, and he's just slowly going mad. Now, it's quite interesting seeing this in the Arrow Blu-ray, because before they used to always have these like DVDs that were absolutely terrible quality. And it's funny to actually have a proper quality version of this film. So you can see everything clearly, it looks beautiful, it's like insane. It feels weird watching this film in good quality. And you can tell that they put a lot of effort into it, but the scripting needs work. Because there is long hours, and there's just senses of, we got the point here, But the good thing is that the kind of floaty quality of the film allows Ferrera to go off on weird tangents and just be a bit crazy sometimes. So it's obviously a director finding himself. The thing is, Ferrera got to become a lot better very quickly. And, I mean, he always makes films about traumatized people who can't quite fit in. And their ideals are, not part of societies. But he learned to pace the films a lot better and have the plots work better, so you have things going on that'll keep you interested as you're going through the character work. Here, it's just the character work there and a lot of atmosphere. And basically, when they run out of character stuff, he starts drill killing people, which is basically killing. Starts off with homeless people because he's terrified of becoming homeless. So he basically brutalises the people he's terrified of becoming one of, which is, so he basically finds he's got a drill, and he gets this external power source he can put around his waist. So once he finally cracks, he actually goes around the city and starts drilling into people, in their head, their chest, anything, just to kill them. He's just starts killing homeless people in brutal ways, and it's obviously... It was called a video nasty, this one, and viewed as a slasher movie. It's just not that. This is not like Jason, who's just killing teens or anything. He's killing old homeless men. he's psychologically damaged. You're not meant to find this, you know, in any way interesting. It's just showing you it's actually showing you the kind of devastation of the economy on people who can't fit in the sense that so these people just cannot find a place in society. They're now homeless and have given up any hope of getting beyond that. And that's what he's terrified of being. So it becomes a traumatizing thing of killing his future self almost. It becomes this weird psychological thing. And it just becomes this trauma that he's kind of going through and he can't express himself at all. And no one in the film can express themselves. They just lurk around each other. And sometimes they have sex, sometimes they're brutal to each other and berate each other. But they don't feel like complete people who are in charge of what they want. Even the band stuff, who are a successful band, they've got a record deal, but they're inarticulate and weird as well. They just don't get on with each other, and there's lots of power plays going on there. And there's power plays in neighbour Ferrera's house, and there's power plays when Ferrera has to deal with the art buyer who will sell his paintings. Because he's trying to do this painting as a buffalo, and one of the interesting things in the film is you're watching this painting going, this does not look that interesting. Like, this is his big thing. And then the art guy comes in and says, this is not very interesting. And it's like pointing out the fact that one of the big problems this guy's got is the fact that he knows he's doing a painting that's not very good. And he was relying on this painting to get him out of his hole. And he realises he's kind of lost all inspiration and he's nowhere to go really beyond psychosis. He's just like this sense of an artist who has lost their thread, who's been so concerned about what people think of him and dealing with his lover and dealing with all this other stuff. He's kind of lost track of what he's about, and he just descends into craziness and rage, and all these images are stored up in his head. He's just giving into them, and it becomes this thing of what are artists but like psychologically damaged people who have found an outlet. Because that's what you see a sense of, that everybody here who are trying to be in the arts or are in the arts, they're either hangers on or they're people with steep problems they don't understand. And at a certain point, basically the girlfriend who's a tourist in the world leaves him, and that just sets him off completely, and he just goes on a complete rampage against everybody at that point, and it's just a total bloodbath. But it's not a bloodbath in a kind of, cool effects way, it's just a bloodbath in this guy's just completely lost it. He's just completely gone. There's no hope for him. He kills the art dealer who keeps on coming on to him to start with because he's gay and he's obviously fancies Ferrera. So he uses that to kill him. And it's just like, okay, this guy's just utterly self-destructive. I mean, the whole film's about that urge to self-destruct and urge to basically destroy everything around you because you find it worthless. You know, there's just that sense of that in the film, which makes it very different from Cute Girl, which is people trying to conform and finding it difficult. This one, it's people trying to not conform, but sell their non-conformity, and how difficult that is, and how exhausting that is, and how that can actually lead to ruin as well. So you've got two different contrasts of conformity or non-conformity, and how both of them can be very difficult paths to take. And Diller Killer is the most successful of the two films. It really is, because you get a sense of what his prayer is going to be, but it just feels this is like a crude form of it. It feels like it's too long, there's too many bits that are not that interesting, and it just needs to get the point quicker a lot of the time. It just feels like it's dragging itself out too much. But it is interesting. There is a lot of cool stuff, but it definitely feels like a film made by a guy who's going to go on and do better stuff. This is the same with Cute Girl as well. They're both films made by directors. This is not their peak. This is them just starting out and finding themselves. They're not like Explosion of a Citizen Kane or something. This is just much more like, this is first film, learning the craft, and there's lots of good stuff there, but they've been basically in this case, Ferrera let it tell stories better and involve people more interesting characterizations, and still keep the kind of feeling of people are claustrophobic and self-destructive, but find other ways to say things rather than just being so straightforward about it. That it's, because if you look at this compared to some of the Addiction he made like a decade and a half later, it's night and day, because Addiction is such a better film. The next one's so much more disturbing and so much more interesting. And this one just feels like the crude attempt at it that hasn't quite came together yet. But it is an interesting film. It is definitely worth seeing. But it is... You will be frustrated with it. It is too long. It doesn't... It feels for that it's pointless. And it's kind of showing you a world that's very difficult to manage, but it does it in a very slow-paced way that needs a bit more drive to it. But that's a debut. That's not two debuts. I hope you enjoyed these, and I hope you go and watch the films because they are very worthwhile. They are very good films. They're not as good as the first two I covered, the Lynch and the Toyota ones. Those are stronger films than these two. But these are still good films. So I'll be back soon with another video. I hope you enjoyed this one.